I'm Brian Wilcox, CEO at the Real Estate Employers Federation. Welcome to Reef TV. In previous episodes of this four-part series about the new Real Estate Industry Award, we covered the review process and a general overview of the changes, the new classification structure and rates of pay, and changes to commission-only employment. In this final episode in the series, we're covering a number of other changes that will impact on real estate employment. To help explain these other changes, I'm joined by Greg Patterson, our Membership Services Director at Reef. Greg, let's start with post-employment commission entitlements. This can sometimes be a contentious issue because many employers hold the view that an employee's entitlement to be paid commissions in the pipeline should cease with the termination of their employment. Can you unravel this for us?
Yes, you're right, Brian. A lot of real estate employers mistakenly have that belief. But even the 2010 award contains a provision insulating an employee's post-employment commission entitlements in circumstances where a contract for sale is exchanged either before the employment ends or during any statutory notice period. So the fact that the award regulates this issue is not new, but it will change slightly under the new award. An employee's entitlement to be credited with a portion of commission or other incentive payments, as set out in their employment contract, now will need to be considered in the context of two possible termination situations. Firstly, if an employee is terminated due to serious misconduct, their entitlement to be credited with a share of commission will only apply to sales where there's a legally enforceable contract in place on or before the date employment ceases. However, where employment comes to an end for any other reason, including resignation, the employee's entitlement to commission extends to sales where there is a legally enforceable contract in place prior to the expiration of the exclusive agency period nominated on the agency agreement. So let's look at an example, Brian. I work for XYZ Real Estate as a salaried salesperson and have an employment agreement setting out that I'm entitled to be credited with 20% of the employer's net commission for any listing I generate, providing the property is sold by XYZ Real Estate. I provide XYZ Real Estate with a resignation letter and my employment ceases on 1 June. Before I resigned, I listed a property on an exclusive agency basis and the exclusive agency period expires on 24 June. At the time my employment ends, there was no legally enforceable contract in place for the sale of the property. However, a contract is later executed on 20 June. In this situation, XYZ Real Estate must recognise my entitlement to be credited with 20% of the gross commission because I am the lister of the property. Whether I actually became entitled to be paid commission from this sale, however, will also depend upon the terms of my commission agreement with XYZ Real Estate. So, for example, at the end of my employment, I may have been thousands of dollars in debit on a debit-credit commission arrangement. So the crediting of the commission from this sale only serves to reduce the debit and nothing may end up being payable to me.
Well, Greg, that makes sense. But what if the employee is actually terminated for serious misconduct?
Okay, Brian, well, let's look at an example using the same dates. But this time, rather than submitting my letter of resignation, I've been terminated on 1 June due to allegations of serious misconduct. Again, my employment agreement sets out my entitlement to be credited with 20% of the employer's net commission. And prior to being terminated, I listed a property on an exclusive agency basis and the exclusive agency period expires on 24 June. Remember, at the time my employment is terminated on 1 June, there was no contract in place for the sale of the property. However, a contract is later executed on 20 June. In this situation, I have no entitlement to be credited with commission from the sale because the contract was not in place at the time I was terminated. My entitlement to be credited with commission from the sale expired on 1 June. The potential problem here is sustaining the serious misconduct allegation. As an employee, I might choose to challenge it. If serious misconduct is the reason for termination, employers should give us a call and we'll be able to provide guidance about whether an employee's conduct does actually constitute serious misconduct and will likely be upheld at law.
So Greg, one last question while we're talking about post-employment entitlements. Can an employee's entitlement be reduced after the employment comes to an end?
Well, Brian, the award prescribes that the portion of commission or incentive payments applied to a post-employment sale must be the same as that which would have been applied if the employment had continued, unless the written commission agreement states otherwise. So using the XYZ real estate example, if there is a written and signed agreement, which unfortunately is not always the case, the portion of commission credited to me could be reduced from 20% to a lower figure. The ability to reduce the commission percentage is entirely a matter for the employer and employee to agree upon, but if this is to happen, it must be stated in the written employment agreement. But remember, this is only the case for salaried salespeople receiving commission. When it comes to commission-only salespeople, the award sets out a minimum commission-only rate, and the commission percentage cannot be reduced below this minimum commission-only rate, even by agreement.
Thanks, Greg. Now let's move on to the new mobile telephone allowance. More and more employers are opting to provide operational employees with a mobile phone or other electronic devices to perform their duties on behalf of an agency. Given that these devices often store very confidential and commercially sensitive information, this seems like a wise idea. But there are certainly those employers that choose to require their employees to provide their own mobile phone or iPad and so forth. What's the new mobile phone allowance that applies in these circumstances?
Well, Brian, if an employer requires an employee to provide their own mobile phone in the course of employment, the employee will be entitled to be paid 50% of their monthly mobile phone plan up to a maximum plan of $100. In other words, the maximum allowance is $50 per month, being 50% of the maximum $100 plan. This is approximately what most employers are currently paying, so the impact of the change should be negligible.
Greg, one of the changes to the award has been the introduction of a motorcycle allowance. Can you elaborate a little bit on this for us, please?
Yes, Brian, this is an interesting change. It came about because of inquiries from real estate employers about what they should be paying to someone using a motorcycle to do letterbox drops. Until now, the award has only prescribed an allowance for the use of a motor vehicle. So to avoid confusion, a new motorcycle allowance has been introduced, and we've adopted the Fair Work Commission standard that applies in other industry awards, and that rate is 26 cents per kilometre travelled for business use. This is the figure that will initially be used to reimburse an employee for the use of their own motorcycle.
And finally, Greg, there are a number of other changes to the real estate award that have not yet been finalised. Could you give us some idea on what these changes may be and when it's likely to happen?
Yes, of course, Brian. In addition to reviewing the conditions of the employment relevant to individual awards, such as the real estate award, the Fair Work Commission is also reviewing a number of employment conditions that it believes should be standardised across industries. In other words, conditions that should apply to every employee covered by an award, irrespective of the industry they work in. The matters the Commission is reviewing on a common basis that may affect real estate employers in the future include arrangements that should apply to part-time and casual employees, including things like minimum engagement periods and casual transition arrangements, termination of employment clauses and notice periods for employees to end their employment, and finally payment of wage arrangements. REEF has prepared and filed submissions on behalf of the industry regarding these matters, and we did this because we don't want to lose the flexibility which we currently enjoy under our industry award. And that's what could happen if the standardisation of these conditions goes ahead. As to the timing of these possible changes based on common issues, Brian, it's difficult to really know with any certainty when these changes will be announced, but of course we will be advising members if and when the changes come about.
Well, thanks for the overview, Greg. Remember, the key date is the 2nd of April 2018. That's when the changes we've outlined here will take effect. Don't forget, you can download the latest version of the Real Estate Industry Award and the Clark's Private Sector Award by logging into the REEF People Management System. Simply go to reef.org.au, click on the login button and then enter your details. Thanks for watching this episode of REEF TV. Don't miss the other 3 episodes in this 4-part series about the new Real Estate Industry Award. Part 1 gives a broad overview of the review process and the changes. Part 2 explains the new classification structure and wage rates. And Part 3 looks at the changes to commission-only employment. And make sure you catch our other episodes of Reef TV to stay up to date with all the latest workplace relations information and news impacting your real estate business. See you next time.